He will hand you your plaque, and you would stop at the first gentleman here, Don, to get a photograph, and then you'd line up in front of the school board. We'll do a whole large group photo. Once that large group photo is taken, I'm asking all parents and students to meet me in the lobby where we'll do individual school pics, okay? With that said, let's get going. Ninth grader from Erie High School. Deasia Matthews has shown a genuine, sustained improvement in attitude and achievement lately. Her attendance has improved substantially. She consistently completes homework and she participates enthusiastically. Deasia has improved in other classes as well, so she deserves to be recognized and rewarded for this. Ladies and gentlemen, Deasia Matthews. As you can see, she's on the ball already. Okay. From Collegiate Academy, 10th grader. Angelina has greatly improved her attendance from last year. More importantly, Angelina was a little shy last year. This year, she has shown us strength and character as she has taken ownership over her education, confidently having discussions with her teachers about her education and gaining a strong 3.0 GPA for the third quarter. Ladies and gentlemen, Angelina Fletcher. Eighth grader from East Middle School. Shatira has really grown this year. She has improved her GPA from 2.0 last year to a 3.7 this year. Ladies and gentlemen, Shatira Knight. Sixth grader from Strong Vincent Middle School. Alana knows what it means to be a Strong Vincent Colonel. She impresses us with her tenacity, compassion, and character on a daily basis. Ladies and gentlemen, sixth grader Alana Cruz Burgos. Boom. Very motivated group. From Wilson Middle School, eighth grader, Karar had perfect attendance in the third quarter. He continues to improve his behaviors and continues to mentor the young students at Wilson. Ladies and gentlemen, Karar Al-Awadi. From fifth grader from Grover, Cleveland. Cooper Heberly, is a super cougar. Cooper's leadership is the strong, silent type. He has climbed the stairs of success his entire career and has awesome grades, attendance, and zero behavior events for the 6 years he has attended Grover, Cleveland. He is a role model for his peers and works with Mr. Owens as a cougar cat, which Mr. Carner referenced, helping younger students every morning. Ladies and gentlemen, Cooper Heberly. And he's a baseball player. Go Erie Sluggers. If you don't know, we have 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grade baseball team for our Erie students. Erie Sluggers. Third grader from Joanna Connell has made outstanding strides in improving his behavior, is making very good choices daily. D'Angelo Culver. Fourth grader from Deal Elementary. I would like to recommend Lucius Cabena for stair climber. His CDT and Dibble scores have continuously increased, and he always tries his hardest, participates, and has homework done. He also exemplifies our 3 rules of be respectful, responsible, and safe. Ladies and gentlemen, Lucius Cabena. Kindergartner from Edison Elementary. Roderick has shown his tremendous growth this year. The most improved area has been his behavior in the classroom. He has learned so much, and everyone in his family has been so supportive of him. We are proud to call him our most improved Edison Eagle this year. Ladies and gentlemen, Roderick Thompson, Jr. Big stairs to climb, but he's doing it. Fifth grader from Harding Elementary. Eric has improved his focus and effort in the classroom. Ladies and gentlemen, Eric Cruz Burgos. Future football player. All right. Fourth grader from Jefferson Elementary. Blake is a great student. He has brought up most of his grades from the first quarter, has great attendance in zero behavior events in 4 years at Jefferson. Ladies and gentlemen, Blake Bennett. Fifth grader from Lincoln Elementary. We are so proud of him. He has improved his behavior tremendously. Along with improved academics, he gets along great with students and staff. Keep up the great work, Frederick. Your Lincoln family loves you. Ladies and gentlemen, Frederick Battles II. This is a proud moment as well as Mr. Harper and myself started out with Frederick in kindergarten at Edison, so it's a proud moment. Good job, buddy. Fifth grader from McKinley, Jonathan Lee. His grades went up in math and reading as well as social studies from second to third quarter. He's on time every day. Jonathan comes to school in uniform and prepared to learn daily. He follows school and classroom rules all the time. Jonathan has also made great progress in taking responsibility for his own education, asks for help, works with others, cooperatively, socially interacting as opposed to staying to himself. Jonathan is helping improve his communication skills with his father by learning sign language as well. Ladies and gentlemen, Jonathan Lee. Yeah, they were unable to make it tonight. That's awesome. Fourth grader from Perry. Christian has been working very hard to improve his grades and has brought his math and reading grades up this quarter. He is consistently meeting classroom expectations and is always willing to help teachers and his fellow classmates. Christian Sharples. Fifth grader from Piper Burley. Tayani has improved significantly academically and in her peer relationships from last year to this year. She is a definite leader in the classroom. She stands up against bullying and takes being kind to others very seriously. Ladies and gentlemen, Tayani Moore. Ninth grader from the DePaulo Success Center, completed 8th grade, working on 9th grade. This is a cyber student, excuse me. Attends every day and acts as a mentor to the younger children in the room. So ladies and gentlemen, Jeremiah Cordero. Ladies and gentlemen, our April 2019 stair climbers.
Hold your plaque up. Turn it around. It's upside down. All you guys are upside down. There we go. Everybody look this way. And 3, 2, 1. One more. 3, 2, 1.
Hold on 1 second. We got some more pictures. Everybody good? All right. Congratulations. Oh, you want one more? You want me to get it?
I think they're directing traffic. keep it elevated when I can. But
Can I have a motion to accept the superintendent's report?
so moved.
Moved by
Second.
Mr. Harkins,
Second.
second by Mr. Cassillo. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing of citizens, persons desiring to speak for 5 minutes must submit their request in writing to the Secretary's office at least 1 week prior to the board meeting. All others may speak for 3 minutes. We have no 5-minute speakers. Anybody would like to speak for 3 minutes? Come on up to the podium. Please state your name, print your name and address on the tablet provided on the podium.
My name is Kathy O'Neill, and I am a board member of Healthcare for All PA. I would like to thank all of you on the Erie School Board for your community service. Healthcare for All PA is a statewide nonprofit working on healthcare reform in Pennsylvania. In 2009, we conducted a study of every municipality and school district in our Commonwealth to find how a single-payer, improved Medicare for All system would affect their health care costs. What we found supported our claim that such a system would save our public employers a lot of money. We would like to give the Erie School District an opportunity to learn more about the Pennsylvania Healthcare Plan that was introduced in both the PA House and Senate last session. It will be reintroduced shortly into both houses this current session. This system would include doctor and other healthcare professionals, hospitals, dental, vision, addiction treatment, and mental health. In January and February of this year, our local chapter redid the 2009 study for Erie County schools and the most populated municipalities. I have sent each one of you a copy of that report. We are available to meet with you to discuss our findings in detail, and we will be attending public meetings to educate elected officials. A good primer to learn about what a single-payer, improved Medicare for All would mean for Pennsylvania is the documentary Fix It, Healthcare at the Tipping Point. It is available, and I have sent you the link for that. The savings are substantial. And single-payer Medicare for All in Pennsylvania would actually expand coverage by covering dental and vision and lowering drug prices. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I hope somebody's timing.
Yeah, we have a timer.
Oh, good,
Yes.
great. First, I'd like to thank all of you again for your service. Secondly, we have undertaken this study again from Healthcare for All PA. It shows the latest study that the Erie School District would save over $14 million annually on employee health care costs. It's a huge, huge figure. So I encourage you all to really look at the study, at the proposed legislation, and to thank Representative Pat Harkins for signing on to this legislation, and to encourage you to ask Representative Bob Mursky and Senator Dan Laughlin to also sign on to this legislation. As we all know, this single-payer / improved Medicare for All is now known nationally. There are 20 states working on this, and also on the federal level. We are hoping in Pennsylvania to do what Canada did, pass universal health care in a state. Canada did it in Saskatchewan first, and proved it could work, and then it was adopted nationally. We are hoping the same happens, and Pennsylvania is large enough to be an incubator for this process. And the savings that would make to this school district would be incredible, to not only all of the students, to all of the taxpayers. It would replace health insurance. We would no longer have the middleman standing there with their hands out in both directions, accumulating money. I mean, after all, what do these people do? They don't provide health care. So we could once again have the freedom to choose any doctor we want, any hospital we want. It would include prescription drugs, no copays, no deductibles. This is an answer that we have all been waiting for, and it's all coming together now. And how fortunate it is that we have incredible people serving our community and our school district, willing to actually look at this study and look at what it would do for everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Could you provide your name, please?
I'm sorry. Cindy Purvis, 101 West 34th Street.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lydia Lath. I am a community organizer with a group called French Creek Indivisible. And last week, around Tuesday or Wednesday, I think it was, I was in Erie High registering students to vote and talking to students about the importance of participating in the political process. While I was there, a police officer in the school, one of the school safety officers, demonstrated the use of his taser in the hallway outside of the cafeteria to a staff person who was later identified by a student as the principal of Erie High. The incident might seem innocuous to most, but it was especially concerning to me because before I was an organizer, I was a trauma therapist in schools. And so I have specific education around the short and long-term impact of trauma, and I am acutely aware of how this incident could have affected students. My two main concerns were, first of all, the psychological, physical, social, and emotional impact that this incident could have on students, but also the apparent lack of concern or lack of awareness of the impact that these officers could have on students, demonstrated by both the officers that were doing that and then the staff members that were present that didn't seem to intervene. So to better understand my concerns, you'd first have to understand the impact of trauma. So on a biological level, trauma has profound lifelong impacts on the development of a child's brain. Exposure to toxic stress or repeated childhood traumas can cause a child's brain to be affected in two major ways. The first way is that the amygdala is oversensitized, and the second way is that the prefrontal cortex is stunted or becomes underdeveloped. So what that means is the amygdala is the part of the brain that is the fight, flight, or freeze response, right? When we sense danger, it's the kind, that's the part of the brain that tells us to jump out of the way of a car that's headed straight for us. The prefrontal cortex is responsible for executive functions, for higher level learning, executive thinking, kind of like the abstract thought, as well as emotional and behavioral regulation. So in a healthy brain, we might be in a situation and be triggered, right? Our fight or flight response clicks on, and then our prefrontal cortex also clicks on and says, okay, this is either real danger or not real danger, and then we can assess, right? Most adults can figure that out. But in a traumatized brain, the amygdala is oversensitive and the prefrontal cortex is stunted. So the amygdala clicks on and says this is dangerous, and then the prefrontal cortex is too weak to signal to it to kind of calm down and to regulate itself. And so, for example, if a police officer fired a taser outside the cafeteria and a student was triggered by it, perhaps because they've had negative experiences with law enforcement in the past or with tasers in the past, or maybe they've witnessed someone else being tasered, regardless, if they become triggered and have previous trauma, then they remained in this heightened state of fight, flight, or freeze and don't have the literal brain capacity to calm down from this incident. So then what does this look like after lunch? So you have a fight response, which is slamming doors, getting in fights, arguing with teachers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Michaela Alicia, 5230 Zessinger Road. To continue. But how do we know these students may be struggling with trauma? To understand the greater potential for students at this time to be traumatized, you have to understand what trauma can look like and who can experience trauma. Trauma can look like abuse or neglect, but it can also look like experiencing a natural disaster, bullying, gang violence, domestic violence, or illicit drug use. It can also look like having a family member who is incarcerated or struggling with mental illness or drug addiction. It also doesn't have to be experienced firsthand at all. Trauma can look like witnessing trauma, such as suicide, drug use, domestic violence, community violence, or war. But even further, more and more research is showing that people don't even have to be physically present for the trauma to feel its impact. With modern technology keeping us plugged into every traumatic news event, we are all exposed to trauma at unprecedented levels. Vicarious trauma is the experience of trauma symptoms without actually physically witnessing the traumatic event itself. Mirror neurons are the parts of the brain that allow us to empathize with people. We see ourselves in their shoes. These mirror neurons are also the parts that allow us to feel those trauma symptoms without experiencing the traumatic event. Many people experience vicarious trauma events like 9/11 or all the various school shootings. Many people of color, particularly Black men and women, report trauma symptoms after the increased reporting to violence against unarmed Black men committed by the police. So after hearing all of these examples, it's not difficult to imagine how every student in that cafeteria has probably experienced one form of trauma or another. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jasmine Flores, 631 East 9th Street to continue. But to understand the specific weight of the incident, you also have to understand the rise in taser-related violence committed against Black and brown people at the hands of police officers. In June of 2018, Sean Williams, an unarmed Black man, was tased by a police officer while calmly sitting on a curve. The officer tased him because he didn't straighten his legs out when he was instructed to do so. This happened in Lancaster, PA. Earlier this same year, the NBA player Sterling Brown was tased by Milwaukee police officers. In 2009, a Bay Area police officer shot and killed Oscar Grant III, an unarmed Black man, while he was laying face down on a rapid transit platform because he mistook his sidearm for his taser. In 2008, a New York police officer fired a taser at an emotionally disturbed man while he was standing on a ledge, and this caused the man to fall 10 feet to death. Gregory Alpert, a criminologist at the University of South Carolina, says that often police use tasers more freely than firearms, perhaps because their perceive them as less lethal. But a Rupture's investigation in 2017 found that at least 1,000 people have died after being stunned by a taser since around 2000. So clearly the tasers can be lethal, but even without the threat, tasers can still be incredibly intimidating and triggering, especially to children and young people. All the stories listed above, especially the ones in 2008, were circulated extremely on social media. And given that today about 92% of teens go online daily and 24% are online constantly, it's not unreasonable to assume that at least some of these students in the cafeteria had seen/heard about the incident previously mentioned. I believe this incident highlights the school's district's profound need for trauma training for staff and officers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Steve Newman. I'm a local business owner, but coming as a concerned parent. Recently, I've heard that Erie Rise Leadership Academy may be looking to close or having to close. My son has been a student at Erie Rise Leadership Academy before that, Fort LaBeouf and Emerson Gridley, and going into Erie Rise Leadership Academy and his entire education from elementary on has been, troubled times. The IEPs needing special assistance. But after the first year in the Erie Rise Leadership Academy, I see such an improvement in my son. He's able to completely drop his IEP and participate in normal classes with with his peers. And, I really feel like, I just want to speak on their behalf. This is something that, and it means a lot to, myself, my wife as parents, and I think, I'm just obligated to say something on their behalf. I think that's about it.
Thank you.
Good evening, school board members. Johnny Johnson, 223 Walnut, Erie, PA. As I was reading the April 8th issue of the Erie Time News, I was struck by the article with the headline, Erie School District Police Gets Tasers. As I began to read the article as a citizen, a taxpayer, and a former educator, I attempted to ascertain the rationale on which this decision was based. 3 statements in the article caught my attention. Number 1, the primary use will be on intruders who might enter and cause disturbances. Is there not an established protocol for people entering district buildings? And who will these intruders be? Will they be irate and disgruntled parents? How many of these intruder incidents have happened to warrant the use of taser purchases? And where is the written district policies for handling these situations with or without tasers? Secondly, to provide a non-lethal option and put the school district police equipment on par with that of the City of Erie Police. Many of us are aware that the lethalness of a taser upon people is often dependent on a person's health, condition, age, and other physical factors. And thirdly, the purchase of tasers is unrelated to any problem with students. Officer Vona is stated as saying it would have to be an extreme case for a district police to use a taser on a student or against intruders. And he closed by saying, and I quote, I have not seen any issues that have occurred over the last couple of years that would warrant any use in schools with students. After reading this statement, I had to refer back to an introductory statement which read, bought in November. The district over the past several weeks has been dealing with reports of fighting at the 2,300 student Erie High School. I am limited in the amount of time to fully vet this issue because I'd go on for days about this. But I would like to iterate that there are too many decisions that are made that affect the community, parents, and students that should be discussed with those involved, not just within hierarchy, which seem like their sole purpose is not to be answerable to taxpayers, parents, and students. This is merely a form of transparency that should be in the forefront of all decisions. And in all this decision making, please take into consideration the what if. If tasers are non-lethal, what if something terrible happened? What if? You need to take those into consideration. I close by saying that whenever a body or an entity neglects process, they are apt to lose credibility, and therefore they should be held accountable for all negative outcomes. May I close very quickly?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I would think that this issue of tasers would be just as important as the district's strategic plan, logos on the stadium turfs, and the wearing of hoodies in district buildings. I wish that we were focused and quick to hire minority teachers and institute an African American curriculum as we were in acquiring tasers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Crystal Lepak, and I am, excuse me, the Youth Service Coordinator for Youth Leadership Institute of Erie. And every year we hold our annual Global Youth Service Day, and it's held right here at East Middle School. This year it's going to be April 27th, and so check your email boxes. I'm sure we're shooting out those emails continually. And so April 27th here at East from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. we'll start the registration process, and then we'll continue on with various projects, celebration, reflection, and end at 3 o'clock. I brought a student along with me who has actually performed at GYSD for the past several years and helped, and now he is also part of youth leadership. And he's going to tell you a little bit about different twists we're putting on Global Youth Service Day with a teen forum.
Hello, my name is Trayvon Bibbs. I'm 9th grade and I go to Agoura Cyber Charter School. Okay, so we're doing she's doing a teen panel this year. We're doing a teen panel this year. But I feel like the whole point of the Global Youth Service Day is to help out the community in some way, shape, or form. One year we made cookies for the homeless. Another year we played kickball to kick out hunger, stuff like that. Yeah. Oh, sorry. On the teen panel, we're going to talk about violence, like how that one man just stated. There was somebody who got tased. There's a lot of issues and stuff for Erie. Like, some people say that we have one of the worst educations in the state. And I don't really like that. I want to change that. Pretty sure all of you want to. Another thing is health, community, drugs, again, violence, stuff like that. So we're going to talk about all of that on the teen panel. And yeah, thank you.
Good evening, board members. Ed Kissel, 2815 Sigsbee. I would just like to encourage the board to keep the stadium the way it is. There are a lot of deaths that attributed to this county that are memorable to that facility. I have served in Korea and Vietnam, and I hope the legend goes on that the stadium stays the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else like to speak for 3 minutes? Not seeing any, we will move on.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Could I make a request of the superintendent?
Sure.
Without any pressure, those first two speakers made some claims about insurance potential savings. I just wonder if they could submit their concept to our business office, and at some subsequent meeting, we could get a report back on whether in fact it could work for us or help us, or whether or not their claims are accurate. I just think it's worth a look. Could we, I think I see them both there. Could we somehow accommodate that if they could submit to the business office what the gist of their suggestion is, and then we could hear a yes or no, or maybe from at a future committee of the whole, maybe?
If you could send it to my email address, I'd appreciate that. I can forward it to the appropriate people then.
Thank you. Reports of committees and liaisons. Angela?
I would just like to say thank you to the Youth Institute for asking myself and Tyler to be a part of their program on April 27th. So both of us will be on their panel. So I'm sure Tyler's just as excited as I am. Yay. So, well, and then the most important thing that I wanted to say was during our Pledge of Allegiance, I just didn't see one of our students that passed away on Wednesday, April 3rd, Nayon Warren, who was 6 years old and was hit on Buffalo Road, and just wanted to take a moment to recognize the fact that he passed away and send our sincerest condolences to the family and our prayers as well.
Thank you. Anybody else? Go ahead.
Serving in the role of the community liaison, I've had several conversations with various students and parents, and I just wanted to reiterate the three women who had discussed trauma and the impact of trauma, and just a lot of reactions that are just the fact that we have resource officers in the school, and how imperative it is that we become more aware of our students who are experiencing and have experienced, because it's very naive of us to not be aware of that, and to also really encourage. We had a panel a few months back now, just on the prison pipeline, and there was a discussion about implicit bias training, and there have been several community members who have come up to me afterwards to really kind of push to make sure that we are looking at that very seriously. So I just wanted to bring that back up and to make sure that those voices are heard. Thank you.
Thank you. If that's it, can I have a motion to accept?
Move we accept the committee reports.
Second. Motion by Mr. Harkins, second by Mr. Cassillo. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Move on, no unfinished business. We'll move on to new business.
I move we approve the new business, that be item 6, all inclusive, and the supplemental new business, item 7, which includes 4 or 5 items.
Right.
As a group.
Moved by Mr. Harkins. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Feeney. Roll call, please.
Mr. Spagel?
Yes.
Mr. Titus?
Yes.
Mrs. Alexandrovich? Mr. Cassillo?
Yes.
Mr. Fabrizi?
Yes.
Mrs. Feeney?
Yes.
Mr. Harkins?
Yes.
Mrs. McNair? Mr. Petrunger?
Yes. We'll move on to separation. Mr. Harkins, since you entered this, would you like to speak on your...
Yes, as you said, it doesn't appear before me in print, but I submitted a resolution according to our rules last week, and perhaps the secretary could read it, and it has to do with the stadium turf.
Resolved by the Board of Directors of the School District of the City of Erie that the administration shall direct the district architect to prepare the necessary designs such that the new turf at Erie Veterans Memorial Stadium shall maintain the current logo and design, and that other means of designating the field as the home field of the Erie High Royals shall continue to be pursued.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
That resolution came about, in my mind, as a result of observing the way things were evolving since the discussions began by us at least a month ago, and as the superintendent pointed out, perhaps years ago. You authorized a sampling of the public's opinion on it, and that was done. And as that evolved, or as that took place, I was uncomfortable with the imperfection of any such sampling. It's not. There's no way to accurately gauge exactly what the public thinks, and the fact is that we are elected to make the decision ultimately. So we're going to have some discussion now, and the sampling should be considered. And my point of view is that and I'll explain why, but why I feel the way I do, but I respect everybody's opinion. Nobody's a villain for whatever they feel here. There's passion on the part of those who want the students to have Erie High logos on the field, and there is passion on the part of people who have a sacred connection to the memorial aspect of the whole facility. So I guess I want to lead off and just say, if I can continue, in less than a decade in Erie history, some very significant things happened. In 1915 at 26th and State, there was just an overgrown, weed-filled culvert where Mill Creek ran from its more known area of the zoo through the center of the city. And on a rainy day in 1915, debris blocked the path of that creek there, and a wall of water built up, and when the dam broke, it created a flood that caused deaths in Erie. It was a significant Erie event. That was 1915. 2 years later, Academy High School was dedicated. Erie was growing rapidly, and there had been one high school at 10th and Sassafras, but Academy High School was dedicated in 1917, north of where, or south of where I'm describing. 2 years after that, then World War I ended. Then 2 years after Academy's dedication, East High School, the original, which used to sit over here on the football field now, where the football field, practice field is now, was built. In 1920, the community came together and funded and tubed Mill Creek so that that flood incident would never happen again. 4 years later, well, not 4 years later, but soon after that, the school district, bursting at the seams and pressed financially because it had just built 2 brand-new high schools, could not afford to do anything with that property north of Academy High School. The community came together because the school district couldn't afford to, and created a movement to fund and build the stadium as we came to know it. And it was dedicated on November 11th, which was Armistice Day of 1924. So all of those events that I mentioned spanned 9 years' time, and that's some pretty eventful stuff. A newspaper reporter who covered the event and the dedication on that date in 1924 said this in his newspaper report: "It was the first time in the history of northwestern Pennsylvania that a city had thus gathered in popular assembly in a stadium built through popular cooperation. It was the first time that an undertaking of such proportions had ever been brought to a successful culmination in this district, and the result, viewed as a whole, was an inspiration fit for the gods. The transformation of an ugly waste spot into one of the most attractive places in the state of Pennsylvania, the pride of Erie, and, quote, a tribute to the men and women who served in the World War, erected by grateful citizens of the city, is a feat truly worthy of such inspiration." They referred to it as the World War because when it happened, it was considered and called the war to end all wars, and no one knew that 20 years later World War II would happen. But in a unique way, the community came together to build not just a football stadium, but a facility where community events could and eventually did happen in a wide array of manners. There was circuses, music concerts, boxing matches, stock car races, high school graduations, and of course football. And not just high school football. There was the Gem City Bowl, which was an all-star college game played every year up until 1963. I say all this because that's the origins of it, and it was rooted in the fact that the community came together admirably, and they were strapped for having funded the tube, probably with taxes. And they came together, and it was to honor the war veterans. Fast forward to the mid-1970s, I was a young man, and I got elected to the school board. And I was aware that the stadium then, in the 1970s, 50 years later, had not had sufficient maintenance and attention and was, to be blunt, crumbling. And I began to ask questions about the history of the stadium, and I learned some of what I just told you at that time myself. And I asked about the Stadium Commission, and the Stadium Commission should have had 9 members, but there was about 4 vacancies at the time, and it was meant to consist of 5 people appointed by the school board, 2 by the Chamber of Commerce, and 2 by veterans organizations to symbolize its origins. Well, there were vacancies, and so I, in working with my fellow school board members, set about finding capable people to fill those vacancies. And I requested and was made one of them. So at that time, I was a voting member of the school board and the Stadium Commission. And through the efforts of a lot of people, we found a way to fund a massive renovation of the stadium in 1975, and it was dedicated in 1976. And prior to that, the only significant work that had been done, and the old-time Stadium Commission member, a guy named Paul Allen, used to always say, well, back in 1946, we put those new lights up there. After General Electric invented some really bright lights, we put them way up high in 1946. Well, that was 22 years after it was dedicated, and it was 30 years prior to what I'm describing as the recognized need in the community to renovate the place. So the renovation happened and natural grass remained on the field. And from time to time, Jimmy DeFazio would put specific logos on the field for specific events with lime and paint. In 1995, the school board decided to install artificial turf, and there was no logo on the field. 12 years later, in 2007, the turf had worn out, needed replacement, and a contest was held among art students in the school district, high school art students, and the logo that is on the field now rose to the top as the preferred one and the approved one, and it was embraced by everybody, and it has been there for 12 years. If we're going to do something other than that, it seems to me we're implying that that logo is, I'll insert words, I know they're my own words, but are we saying it's passé, that it's boring, that it's outlived its value? I don't think we want to say that, and I don't want to overstate it, or I just want to be accurate. It just seems to me that we seem to have proceeded here to replace that logo as if it was a given, and as if there was nobody that wanted to maintain it as it was. And I just believe that, I want to say one more thing. There was a veterans representative on the Stadium Commission in 1976. His name was John Ferguson. He was the director of Erie County Veterans Affairs at the Erie County Courthouse. Very involved with veterans and their activities, and a member of the Stadium Commission. And during the process of the discussions that happened in that year between the commission and the board to renovate the stadium, he spoke up strongly, and he said, I'll bet not many of you know that that facility was built to dedicate to the memorial of the veterans of World War I, and ought to be thought of as a memorial to all veterans. And he kept harping on it. And I, being a young man who was capable of being impatient, pointed out to him that on the northwest corner of the outside wall of the stadium, the stone tablet read, "The Stadium, a tribute to the men and women who served in the World War, erected by grateful citizens of the city of Erie." It was the stadium. And I said, John, it doesn't say Veterans Stadium, it just says the stadium, and that's what everybody calls it. That stone is now on the inside wall of the renovated stadium on the northwest corner. But he convinced me over time and aroused enough community support to recognize that whatever it had been called, that it deserved to be called the Veterans Memorial Stadium. And he had some proof that it actually had been in the original documentation, and it's pointless to kick that around too much. I don't want to say we can't change it because it's old. I just wanted to point out that there was an involvement of views of the stadium that over time, separate generations had time to take a look at the situation and reaffirmed the commitment to the sacredness of the sacrifice made by those war veterans. So it's just not to be taken lightly and cast aside without some thought, and we are giving that, and I'm grateful for you listening to me right now with this. But so we're going to have other points of view on this, I know, but I just thought it was important to point out that over the span of decades, different decision makers and different times that the community their attention was pointed at the stadium, the community rallied and reaffirmed the commitment to the memorial aspect of that unique multi-purpose facility. Most recently, when that logo was placed there as a result of a contest between Erie School District students, and I think it's appropriate, and I think whatever compromise we come up with ought to be not to put Erie High's logo on the turf, but to find a way among many possibilities with murals and signs and archways in and out of the stadium to declare it the home of the Erie High Royals. But I just think the turf, out of reverence for what I tried to describe, ought to be left as is.
Okay, at this point, we need a motion.
Well, I'll make that.
Motion by Mr. Harkins. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Spiegel. Any discussion?
Yes, Mr. President.
Yes.
Over the course of the past few weeks, this has been a topic of conversation everywhere any of us go. We've all had conversations with different thought processes when it comes to the logo on the stadium. My personal view is, like John, that the logo itself was developed by students years ago, and it should stay where it is. Now, the compromises that were put forth to be voted on included a few different variations of how to do that. And as we discussed things and went on in the meeting before we have this meeting, it's the committee of the whole. It's also a public meeting, but it's held before this meeting. And there was some discussion that under Mr. Harkin's resolution, what would happen would be the field would stay exactly as it is, which means that the Veterans logo would be in the center and the end zones would remain red, okay? Which, to I do believe that the students at Erie High, Erie Royals, it would be good to honor them in some way. And so I'm not going to talk about this much more because I know that Mrs. Feeney has a resolution that may be a compromise that I can live with and vote. And so if that compromise, if Mrs. Feeney would like to explain that a little bit, it may explain when the vote comes up why I'd vote no when I'm for the veteran things in the center.
Ms. Feeney.
So I was not at the meeting where the presentation happened with the logos, but afterwards, Director Petrunger had asked for a committee, and Director Fabrizi had asked me to sit on that committee, which I did, along with Director Spagel. In sitting on that committee, we had input from different various groups within the community. So we did consult with the veterans. We also listened to the students' concerns. We listened to the coach, some parents, and it was the vote was pretty split, just as the vote came out with our survey. It was very, very close. And so I've felt all along that a compromise is what we need. It's extremely important that we continue to honor our veterans. And in doing so, we would be leaving the logo in the middle of the field. But I also think it's very important that we recognize our student athletes because they do commit a lot of time to the sports that they play, and they are representing the Erie School District. And so they deserve to have some recognition on that field as well. If you look at what's happening in our country now with Times, even at Soldiers Field, you have several different logos on that field that represent different groups. But Soldier Field was still built in the same premise as Erie Veterans Memorial Stadium was built, which was to honor the veterans. So with that, my option or my motion would include keeping the veterans logo in the middle of the stadium, but then I would like to also have our end zones named after the Erie Royals, and in addition to that, I'd like to have the Erie High Royals logo in the south end zone. So that will be the motion that I may be presenting.
Anybody else would like to discuss? Ms. McNair.
So you're not presenting that tonight? Or you?
Yes. It would be
Yes.
if Mr. Harkins fails, then she would probably make a
come
motion.
back with her motion.
Right.
So do we have a sample?
We don't have a sample, but what we would be doing, if you look at your sample.
Well, of what she's saying. because I
Option
don't-
A, if you look at option A, what we would be doing is leaving Veterans Memorial Stadium logo in the middle of the field, and then the Erie High logo would go into the horseshoe south end zone where the Veterans Memorial Stadium logo is in option B, C, and D. Actually, I think it would look quite nice to have that logo above the word Royals.
You following everything?
So the end zones would be Royals.
Right.
And
It's going to
then-
say Erie Royals in words, and then the logo would be where the veterans.
She's saying over here.
I mean, I understand.
You got it?
I'm seeing what you're talking about. So, like I said before, I do think that I'm not gonna support I'm not gonna support just leaving it as is, because I too, and I told you this in the meeting last week, have put it out there to the public, on social media as well. And just like even now, I'm getting messages about, the fact that, times change. We have to give we combine all these high schools, and we need to, give them a sense of pride in the stadium that they play in. I do like Darlene's idea of what she's trying to do. I mean, that's just like with someone suggested, like even with a National Football League, you're not going to leave the old team's name in that field. You're going to switch it up to the people that currently are playing on that field. So you're not going to have whoever played before the Steelers' name still on their field, and they're playing on that field right now. So we have to take into consideration that, with this being a new high school, and we're saying this is the way things are going to be now, we have to move on with the times, just as in many other things that we have to do in the school district. Things have to evolve with time. Everything can't stay the same. I mean, I respect, all the effort and things that were put into the stadium. Do not want to change the name of the stadium. Like Darlene's idea of, having the logo still be a part of the stadium, but also we have to be progressive in our thinking, and we can't just get stuck. A lot of times I feel like, people in the community get stuck in certain ways, and they don't know how to have a progressive way of thinking. So, I will support, what you're saying, Darlene, because I do want to see Erie Royals on that field, because those kids deserve to have, their name on that field and have a sense of pride when they're playing on that field. So, I will support that.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes.
I just wanted to come back around to some of the comments that were shared during committee of the whole, and just kind of clarify what I said, because honestly, I'd stay up all night thinking about it tonight if I didn't come back around and address this. I just want to be clear that I believe that the students' voice is very valid. So when I had articulated that I liked option D, as this was the one that was most voted on by the students, it was under the presumption that these were the options we had, like that we couldn't make amendments to it. I'll kind of go on later in my ramble that I do endorse what Director Feeney just said. However, but I wanted to come back that I do believe the students have a voice that is valid, and that does not negate in any way, shape, or form the sacrifices made by our veterans, nor would I ever endorse negating the veterans. I think the students, far from control, run, or have an abundant say, as we as adults often discredit them. However, that does not mean that their voices are not valid, wise, articulate, and worthy of our consideration. And lastly, I want to close out. If we do not empower them, we become the first to disempower them. And I absolutely 100% believe in compromise, and I absolutely endorse the idea that was presented by Darlene.
Anybody else before we move on?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I just want to, I worry that I'll be misunderstood about a few things. I wasn't rambling about my own involvement in the 1970s for any reason other than to say I witnessed some of it, and I saw the community embrace the concept of the veterans thing. And I want to, more than anything, point out I was the young, impatient guy who was trying to deal with the old guys who were pretty stuck and didn't want to make changes. But I just see a difference now, because then the community embraced the veterans thing, the veterans theme, and 12 years ago they embraced that logo, and I just feel wrong. I feel personally it's wrong to consider it passé, that logo. But it has also been said that Prep and McDowell have their own decorations on their fields. I believe we have a different situation. I believe Prep and McDowell created their own high school football field specifically for high school football, and God bless them, they can do whatever they want. And generations of Erie Public School football players played on the stadium field, and there was never a logo, and they were never deprived or felt so. And that's just a fact that we didn't have any logo there until 12 years ago, and the one that came then was embraced and is appreciated. So I'll stop there because I think I know what's going to happen.
Mr. President?
Yes.
I'd just like to say one more thing about all of this. You know, we're always concerned about the kids and what lessons we're teaching the kids in any situation that's going on in this board, in the community, and whatever. And I would just like to say that this whole exercise in democracy, what's gone on about this, and some people may say we've put too much into it, I think it shows the kids that if, first of all, it shows the kids that there is a need to have respect for the past and generations before and what they've done to provide the country we live in today, which would be about the logo itself. But it also shows that if they speak up and there's a voice, that it is heard by people that are sitting on this board. And so therefore, some conversations have taken place to come up with a compromise that honors their wishes also. So I think that it's a win-win situation in the very end. I know that it's been complicated for everybody involved. It was never the people that were for the veterans were against the kids, and the people that were for the kids were against the veterans. That was never the case. And I've talked to both sides and talked to both people. That was never the case on anybody that I saw that was involved in it. So I just wanted to state that, and I'm going to vote no on Mr. Harkins' resolution because I believe that the compromise that Mrs. Feeney Director Feeney has brought forth is a good compromise that teaches both of the lessons that I previously discussed. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, John.
I just agree with Robbie that this was a demonstration of the process and how it should work, and it's good for the students to be involved and to see where this leads and to see that both sides presented that every opinion was listened to and respected, and I repeat that I respect and will abide by whatever the majority of the board decides to do. But it's worthwhile to have these discussions, and we don't have enough of them. You've all heard me say, we used to have too much controversy at these meetings. We don't have enough discussion of what we're doing out here in public because we have at our committee of the whole meetings a lot of kicking back and forth of questions, concerns, and clarifications. So this is good for the public and for us to have this discussion on such things as this. And whatever we do as a result of it, we can go forward knowing that we gave it a good look, and whatever we should embrace whatever comes out of it.
Thank you. Can I have a roll call, please, for the...
Mr. Spiegel?
I'm not quite sure exactly what I'm voting for, but I'm voting for Mrs. Feeney.
No, Tom, you're voting on...
Is this correct?
Tom?
No.
Tom, you're voting on John's resolution to leave everything the same.
No.
Mr. Titus?
No.
Mrs. Alexandrovich?
No.
Mr. Castillo?
No.
Mr. Fabrizi?
A reluctant no.
Mrs. Feeney?
No.
Mr. Harkins?
Yes.
Mrs. McNair? No. Mr. Bertrunger?
No.
Mr. President?
Yes.
I would like to make a motion that the Board of Directors adopt option A for the Erie Veterans Memorial Stadium's logo and design for new turf with the addition of the Erie High Royals logo in the south end zone, what we call the horseshoe.
I second.
Motion by
Mrs. Feeney, second by Mr. Pasillo. Any discussion?
If I could, please, I just want to mention to the veterans and to the community members that did want to keep the logo, the Veterans Memorial logo as is, that I have spoken with Superintendent Polito, and all along in committee, I kept trying to emphasize that more than just the physicalness of the stadium and the logos that we were going to be putting on the stadium, that I felt it was very important that we had some introduction and our history classes at Erie High and at Collegiate Academy, where we are actually teaching the students about the history of Veterans Memorial Stadium, that I feel that that would be very impactful to them. And also, as we do with our Medal of Honor curriculum, where we teach our students about the various the services in our armed service, and that their characteristics are taught to our students. So not only are we just going to honor both in the stadium, but we're also going to have an emphasis through a committee on teaching our students about the history of Veterans Memorial Stadium.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I feel strongly enough in the point I wanted to make about preserving and reaffirming our commitment to the existing logo that I'm not going to vote for this, but I do recognize that Darlene's suggestion is the most preferable, and she is a compromiser, and God bless her. Just as she respectfully voted against mine, I'm going to do that in return, but not out of anything other than respect. And I do think that that's the best compromise relating to the turf that could be made. But my no vote will be because I feel strongly enough, and I want to be consistent, that we should reaffirm what's there.
Understand.
Mr. President?
Yes.
Thank you. I just want to recognize the fact that it will still be the Veterans Memorial Stadium. It's not going to be Erie Royal Stadium. We're still honoring our vets, especially those that gave their lives. And I certainly would never diminish the impact that our vets have had on the lives of every person here. And I don't believe in my heart that we are diminishing our appreciation. And we're still retaining the central focus of the Veterans Memorial Stadium by having the logo at the 50-yard line. So I feel that the proposal that Ms. Feeney is putting forth is a perfect compromise. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? No? Roll call, please.
Mr. Spagel,
Yes.
Mr. Titus,
Yes.
Mrs. Alexandrovich,
Yes.
Mr. Castillo,
Yes.
Mr. Fabrizi,
Yes.
Mrs. Feeney,
Yes.
Mr. Harkins,
No.
Mrs. McNair,
Yes.
Mr. Petrunger.
Yes. Move on to approval of minutes.
Move we approve them for March 13th and 27th of 2019 as
Motion by
electronically
Mr.
attached.
Harkins, second by Mr. Cassillo. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Bills and payroll.
Move we approve them for payment as presented.
Motion by Mr. Harkins,
Second.
second by Mr.
Things work
Cassillo.
out.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Spagel,
Hold on. Yes.
Mr. Titus,
Yes.
Mrs. Alexandrovich, Mr. Castillo,
Yes.
Mr. Fabrizi,
Yes.
Mrs. Feeney,
Yes.
Mr. Harkins.
Yes.
Mrs. McNair,
See you, Tom.
yes, Mr. Petrunger.
Yes. Report of the secretary.
Move we accept and approve it.
Motion by Mr. Harkins. Second by Linda. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Spagel,
He's off.
Mr. Titus,
Yes.
Mrs. Alexandrovich? Yes. Mr. Castillo?
Yes.
Mr. Fabrizi?
Yes.
Mrs. Feeney?
Yes.
Mr. Harkins?
Yes.
Mrs. McNair?
Yes.
Mr. Petrunger?
Yes. Awards on bids. Do I have a motion to accept?
Move that we accept them?
Mrs. Feeney on the motion. Need a
Second.
second by Mr. Harkins. Any discussion?
Question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
What is this?
Mr.
Can we just hear a little bit about what it,
Polito?
Could I have Mr. Brockman come up and explain this, please?
I don't need a long explanation. I'm just curious. It sounds interesting, and I just don't know what, just like to hear a little bit about it.
See what we were actually awarding the bid on. You talking about the Galileo mapping system?
That would be the one.
So I believe that is part of the PA Ready Smart Grant, or it's actually part of one of the CTE lab curriculums that is going on.
Mapping what?
It's one of, to be honest with you, I don't know the actual answer to that question. I'll be honest.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot, Neil. I just,
It may be like street mapping or something.
that's what I thought, and I couldn't
I
understand.
believe it might be for the automotive.
Yeah, the
department.
automotive department.
Okay. Well,
Yeah?
Auto
Auto body.
body.
Auto body. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mikowski.
thank you.
Can I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Titus?
Yes.
Mrs. Alexandrovich? Yes. Mr. Castillo?
Yes.
Mr. Fabrizi?
Yes.
Mrs. Feeney?
Yes.
Mr. Harkins?
Yes.
Mrs. McNair? Mr. Petrunger?
Yes. Any other matter before we make a motion to adjourn?
Mr. President, one more
Yeah.
thing. I want to go back and I want to reiterate and make sure we do not forget the importance of understanding the impact that we have on our students who have gone through any type of trauma. This was a very important discussion we needed to have about the Veterans Stadium and the turf, and also it's unfortunate that the topic of trauma came up at the same time because I don't want it to be overshadowed and forgotten. I think it's imperative that we really do focus in, and as a board, that we have some lengthy discussions just about how we can do better as a district.
Thank you.
Mr. President? Oh, go ahead, Ms. Smith. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say once again how excited I am that the district is going to be working with the Eagles Nest on this project for next school year. Excited for all the students that are going to be coming back to the district through the program, and appreciate Bishop Brock for being here at the meeting tonight.
Yeah, I would just like to, the three women that came up earlier, the first ones that spoke, they talked about an incident, and I would just like to request that and I'm sure he was already going to, the superintendent looks into that incident and figures out what that was all about, okay?
I will be looking into it tomorrow morning.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Mr. Castillo.
Hi, Mr. President. I just want to reiterate and reaffirm what Mrs. McNair said, and that I'm excited that we are engaging with the Bishop Brock and the Eagles Nest. I feel that it's going to result in excellence in our students. It's going to enhance the educational process, and I feel that with the guidance and the care that Bishop Brock has taken with others in the community, that this is going to be a resounding success and a major plus for Erie Public Schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Meany?
Mr. President, thank you. I just also want to let Lydia Lath, is that how, that I appreciate you coming tonight and speaking. Some of our teachers have, and our schools have had trauma-informed decision-making and seminars through our community schools effort, but it has been a goal of mine that all of the teachers in the Erie School District have this important training. So I thank you for coming tonight and bringing this to our attention.
Thank you. I would just like to say that I would deeply respect your opinions, your knowledge, your wisdom, you know. And in the same respect, I think we came up with the best compromise we could. I mean, in my family alone, my father was a vet, my stepfather was a vet, my father-in-law is a vet, my brother-in-law is a vet, so I know what it is to mean to honor these people. And I think by the compromise we have by keeping there, it's just going to give those kids a greater pride of that stadium and showing that they can learn a little bit more about the vets, but also it gives them a little bit more to be proud of. Not just their stadium, but they're representing all those vets from years gone by. So that's all I wanted to say.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I appreciate that, and as Robbie said, I think it was good for the community to see us debate this with civility and come to a solution and not drag it on. So it was good for everyone to see us in action, and so it's all good, and I appreciate your comments, and I appreciate everyone's comments, and we move forward from there.
All right, take a motion to adjourn.
Moved.
Moved by Mr. Cassillo.
Second.
Second by Mr. Titus. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Meeting's adjourned.
We're still friends?